It's March 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the ongoing mass walkout by doctors. The South Korean government is adamant that a medical school quota hike must happen. Medical school professors will announce on Friday whether they will submit mass resignations. The European Parliament has given a green light to the world's first comprehensive framework for constraining the risks of AI. The law, which comes into effect at the end of 2024, will apply to any companies doing business in the EU. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill that could eventually ban the social media platform TikTok in the country. The bill now heads to the Senate, while President Joe Biden is more than willing to sign the bill into law. The government continues to call on medical school professors to remain at their posts. But the professors nationwide are still considering leaving their jobs and will make that a final decision by Friday night. Our Shin Yeon starts us off.
The massive walkout by junior doctors could soon expand to collective resignations by professors of medicine. An emergency response committee of professors from 19 medical schools across the country decided in a late-night online meeting on Tuesday to determine by Friday whether to submit collective resignation letters. Those schools include those affiliated with the so-called Big Five hospitals in Seoul, Seoul National, Yonsei Severance, and Seoul St. Mary's Catholic University hospitals, and the Samsung and Seoul Asan medical centers. In the statement released after the meeting, the professors said they would protect the trainee doctors from legal action by the government. They also said they would stop the government's plan to expand the medical school quota. In response, Second Health Vice Minister Park Min-soo urged the professors on Wednesday to stay in their positions, saying this was a matter of trust between patients and doctors.
If professors resign and leave patients behind, not only doctors, but also medical students will lose any sympathy from the people.
On the same day, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo reaffirmed the government's firm stance on boosting the medical school quota, saying the decision was made based on scientific analysis.
The decision made by the government was based on scientific grounds. We have decided to increase enrollment by 2,000 starting from 2025, taking into account the time required for medical training.
The government, meanwhile, will provide nearly 95 billion won, or over $72 million, to public hospitals this year to address the prolonged disruption of medical services. This comes as local hospitals have been experiencing a medical vacuum, such as appointment cancellations and delays in surgeries and emergency medical treatment since the massive walkout by trainee doctors. Meanwhile, Kim Tae-gu, the chairman of the Emergency Response Committee of the Korean Medical Association, underwent 14 hours of police questioning from Tuesday afternoon. Kim is one of the 5 individuals the health ministry accused on February 27th of obstructing junior doctors' training through inciting of their mass walkout. After questioning, he said the government's strong stance was regrettable and the walkout by the trainee doctors was entirely voluntary. The current situation, sparked by the government's plan to increase medical school enrollment by 2,000, has been ongoing for 4 weeks. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
The EU has set a global precedent by being the first to officially pass a law regulating artificial intelligence. Under this new rule, AI technologies deemed high risk, especially those used in healthcare and education, must be under human control. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The European Union has taken a groundbreaking step by officially passing the Artificial Intelligence Act, setting a new global benchmark in AI regulation. The European Parliament on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of the act, with 523 votes for, 46 against, and 49 abstentions. The pioneering act aims to ensure transparency and minimize the risks of AI use. The EU began drafting AI regulations in 2018, and the first draft was released in 2021. Since then, the EU has faced hurdles, including concerns over potential competitive disadvantages facing European companies. Nevertheless, a consensus was reached in December last year, recognizing the critical need to curb the risks of AI abuse by tech firms. With the approval, the Parliament said that the law has created a global standard in AI governance.
The first regulation in the world that is putting a clear path towards a safe and human-centric development of AI.
Set to go into effect by the end of the year, the law categorizes the application of AI into 4 risk levels: minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. The use of AI in areas deemed to pose minimal risks, such as search engines, will not be subject to regulation. On the other hand, where there are limited risks, such as with chatbots, specific transparency obligations will need to be met. Technology related to healthcare and education, such as robot-assisted surgery, falls into the high-risk category. In these cases, government approval must be secured before development, and human oversight must be ensured during use. Unacceptable use of AI due to extreme risk, including public-facing biometric systems and predictive policing, will be banned. However, there will be exceptions for law enforcement in cases such as searching for a missing person or preventing a terrorist attack subject to prior to court approval. Violators face steep penalties, including fines of up to almost $40 billion or up to 7% of their global annual turnover. 신세벽, Arirang News.
And the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of a bill that could lead to a complete ban of TikTok in the country. It remains to be seen whether that will actually happen, though, as a Senate vote is still required. Lee Seung-jae has more.
With overwhelming support, the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted 352 to 65 in favor of passing a bill that would ultimately ban the use of a popular video sharing platform, TikTok. American lawmakers have been calling for a ban on the platform, arguing that it poses a national security threat due to the fact that it's run by Chinese-based parent company ByteDance, and the Chinese government could use information gathered through the platform to its advantage. Wisconsin Republican Representative Mike Gallagher, who is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, stressed before the vote that the bill forces TikTok to break up the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party.
If the bill is passed by the Senate and goes into effect, ByteDance must sell TikTok's U.S. business rights within 6 months. If the sale fails, Google Play, Apple App Store, and other app platforms will be banned from providing TikTok for download. The bipartisan vote by the House comes despite former President Donald Trump's opposition to banning the popular app. Trump had argued that banning TikTok would lead to the growth of Facebook, which he criticized as an enemy of the people. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a briefing on board Air Force One on Wednesday that the top office is pleased to see progress on the bill. She added that the legislation is important as the U.S. continues to address threats posed by foreign technology services that put U.S. national security and the personal information of Americans at risk. The press secretary further emphasized that the White House wants to make sure the bill is on the strongest legal footing possible. However, it remains to be seen whether the bill can be passed with as much support in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been non-committal about bringing it to the floor for a vote, while other lawmakers vow to oppose the passage of the bill. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Fruits have been exorbitantly priced here in South Korea. Considering one apple costs less than $2 in Japan and not even $1 in the U.S., $3 to $4 apples are not at all cheap for people here. We're joined by Professor Shin Myung-gyu for more. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. South Korea seeing a historic surge in fruit prices just last month with an inflation rate of 40.6%. Professor Shim, what's the reason behind this?
I think there are two main factors behind the surge of fruit prices. First, production shortage and negative consumption spillover. First, the production of apples, which takes about 20% of all fruit consumption in Korea, has decreased over time due to aging and global warming. The aging lowers the number of farmers, so that cultivation area of apple has shrunk. And the global warming has lowered the cultivation area, as well as more frequent heavy rain during summer has also contributed to lower production. And second reason is the spillover effect from the surge of apple prices on other fruits. Because apple has become more and more expensive, consumers have tried to substitute apple with other fruits like tangerine. And this further raises prices of other fruits, which contributed to overall increase in fruit prices.
Right. One solution that I can think of on top of my head is importing those fruits, including apple. But why is that option not considered as so much of a viable solution?
As I pointed out earlier, domestic production is one of the main problems behind the scene. And one possible way to support demand is to increase import, as you suggested. And it seems that the government considers such an option by lowering the import tariff on several fruits, including banana and mango. I think this is a clearly good option, but this cannot be a permanent solution because it will impact the income of the farmers, as well as it can also introduce new plant diseases to Korea. And it is natural that income of farmers will decline with the lower fruit prices if more fruits are distributed to the market. And given that most of the farmers are not young, such a decline in income can be critical for sustaining their lives, and that might further prevent inflow of young farmers because they expect their lifetime income from farming to become lower, which can have long-run negative impact on food supply.
So could be a blow to those farmers who are not as young potentially, and also potential risks on the way, like new diseases and the pests. Now, food inflation doesn't apply just here in South Korea, but also for the rest of the world. How are other countries coping with such high-priced food prices?
Yes, for instance, the U.S. experienced similar issues last year, and the underlying reasons are similar: supply shortage and climate change. The recent surge in overall price level has led to a higher labor costs, and geographical risk in several regions, including Ukraine, has increased the price of meal and the others. One way to stabilize the food price is to stabilize the supply chain for food. Since the outbreak of COVID-19 and the Ukraine-Russian war, the supply chain for food has been disrupted a lot. And given that foods are not that perishable, it was inevitable to experience hike in food prices. So constructing a concrete supply chain of food was necessary. And this also involves a different kind of policy by diversifying the sources of import for food so that the negative effect of climate change on a particular region can be mitigated.
Right, and what's even more concerning is that such high prices will remain, it looks like will remain in place up until Chuseok or Korean Thanksgiving in September. Should we be concerned?
Yeah, unfortunately it's true. And I also think that it will take some time for the food prices, especially fruit prices, to be stabilized. The main reason is that food is not immediately produced as you want to be supplied to the market, and it is not storable for a long time. For example, It takes several months for apples to be produced unless it is imported right now. But as I pointed out earlier, it's not that easy to import lots of foods immediately, implying that food prices cannot be fully stabilized until new products are supplied early fall.
Professor Shim, before I let you go, any tips for wise food shopping for those fruit lovers out there, including myself?
Well, I can think of two options. One simple answer would be to spend more time to search for food prices more regularly. Either online or offline markets provide discounts for food from time to time, especially on the items whose conditions are not that good. And a regular price check can help consumers to save their money. I also suggest using services to deliver foods, especially fruits and vegetables, directly from the local producers. Since it does not involve immediate risk, it would help consumers to spend less on food, I hope.
All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for those tips and for your insight this morning. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Moscow says it's communicating closely with Seoul over a South Korean national imprisoned in Moscow on espionage charges following his arrest in January. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said Wednesday that Moscow is considering allowing the South Korean national surnamed Beg to receive consular counsel. She further declined to comment on the charges, calling it a confidential matter. Her comments come hours after Seoul's ambassador to Russia, Lee Do-hoon, met with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko and requested that Moscow cooperate to ensure the South Korean nationals' rights and safety. A space industry cluster will be launched here in South Korea, which is expected to lead the country's mission of landing on the moon in a decade and on Mars after 20 years. It's a so-called space tech triangle. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol promises to invest over $1 billion in space technology over the next 3 years as part of South Korea's efforts to become a leading space power by 2045. This came on Wednesday as the president attended the launch of a space cluster in Sacheon City, Gyeongsang-do province, which will form the so-called space triangle with Jeollanam-do province and Daejeon City.
2032년 우리 탐사선을 달에 착륙시키고 2045년 화성에 태극기를 꽂는 미래로의 큰 걸음을 내딛게 됩니다. 오늘 출범하는 우주산업 클러스터가 앞으로 그 길을 선도하게 될 것입니다.
According to Korea Aerospace Research Institute, the cluster will connect research centers, firms, and educational institutions to achieve cutting-edge innovations. Gyeongsang-do will focus on satellites, Jeollanam-do launch vehicles, while research and training experts will be done in Daejeon, the country's hub for science and technology. Laying out the vision of turning South Korea into one of the world's top 5 space powers and creating a vibrant space industry, Yoon said he would expand the budget for space development to $1.1 billion by 2027, double the amount of private funding, and create over 250,000 quality jobs. The government's 2045 plan aims to build a space industry worth $76 billion of private investments, attract and foster 1,000 space firms in the country, and nurture 30,000 space professionals. It will focus on establishing infrastructure, strengthening a space tech ecosystem, and expanding the new space cluster's networking capacity. To coordinate these efforts, the government will launch a South Korean equivalent of NASA in Sacheon City in May, which will lead aeronautics and space research, commercial projects, and plans for Moon and Mars explorations. The Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA, is expected to work with other global space agencies like NASA, with discussions already underway between Seoul and Washington to apply South Korea's mobility, secondary battery, 5G, self-driving, and nuclear technologies in joint space exploration projects. Korea is already taking part in the US-led Artemis project, which will send a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket to the moon later this year, equipped with a Korean-made lunar monitoring payload. Seoul has also agreed to expand space cooperation with the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, Japan and France. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Gaza, where an Israeli airstrike on a UNRWA food distribution center in Rafah on Wednesday killed 5 and left over 20 injured. On Wednesday evening, the Israel Defense Forces released a statement saying its aircraft precisely targeted and eliminated a terrorist in Hamas's operations unit in the area of Rafah, Mohammed Abu Hasna. The IDF statement failed to mention the UNRWA facility. A man with Hasna's name was on the Gaza Health Authority's list of the 5 deaths. UNRWA said that a member of their staff was also among those killed. It stated that since the war began, at least 165 of its employees in Gaza have been killed, with more than 150 facilities hit by airstrikes. UNRWA Chief Felipe Lazzarini said that attacks on their centers and facilities had become commonplace in blatant disregard to international humanitarian law. Moving over to China, where a deadly blast at a restaurant in the country's northern Hebei province on Wednesday killed at least 2 people and injured 26 others. According to reports, a gas leak is suspected to have caused the explosion. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV said the explosion occurred at around 8 a.m. local time in a fried chicken shop in the town of Yanjiao, some 80 kilometers from Beijing. The explosion damaged nearby buildings, shattering windows and scattering debris. Local authorities said the fire had been brought under control, adding that additional casualties may be found once the rubble is cleared. In Japan on Wednesday, local time, a space rocket exploded shortly after launch. Japan's Space One Kairos rocket exploded only seconds after lifting off near the launch pad on the Kii Peninsula in western Japan. Space One had been attempting to be the first private Japanese company to launch a satellite into orbit. The company's president, Masakazu Toyoda, said that 18-meter, 4-stage solid-fuel rocket was terminated after control judged the achievement of its mission would be difficult, while no comment was made on what triggered the self-destruction. The rocket carried a payload of an experimental government satellite, which could be used as a temporary backup when operational intelligence satellites fall offline. In Thailand's ancient city of Ayutthaya, around 70 elephants were treated to a special fruit feast on Wednesday to celebrate National Elephant Day. Buddhist monks performed traditional ceremonies and rituals at the event. Thailand's National Elephant Day began in 1998 by wildlife conservationists to emphasize the importance of the connection to the animal and encourage anti-poaching efforts. According to the Thai Wildlife and Plant Conservation Department, there are about 3,800 domesticated elephants in sanctuaries across Thailand.
Good morning. We had pleasant early spring weather yesterday. It was quite windy, but fine overall. It looks to be warmer this afternoon, and the warming trend will hit its peak on Saturday, topping out at 17 degrees Celsius here in the capital. But those of us in central regions in Gyeongsang-do need to pay the price for the early warmth. The ultrafine dust level will be high all day today, but the rest of the country should have decent air quality, so take advantage of the nice weather today if you can. It will get worse tomorrow in more places. Checking on today's highs now. Most parts will see highs going up 1 to 4 degrees. Higher this afternoon, feeling more like early April. Seoul gets up to 15 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju topping out at 18 degrees. Sunny skies are expected for most parts while it's getting dry in East Coast regions. Looking ahead, rain is in the forecast on Jeju from Saturday, and it will rain in most of the southern regions on Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
여기 희망이 없어.
저는 우리 동네가 좋아요.
돌핀이야.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's March 14th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yeon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Choi-Ji-hee.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, and Im Sang-yeon.
As well.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. In just a week since South Korean theme park Everland opened up pre-reservations for admissions to its Sky Garden Path, 6,000 people have signed up. The Sky Garden Path is the capital's first plum blossom theme park with over 11,700 trees blossoming with spring flowers. Everland is currently receiving online reservations for the garden park that's set to open from March 15th to 26th. As of now, 80% of those who have reserved are women. Most are in their 30s or 50s. And day after day, we're seeing AI technology develop. Recently, a report commissioned by the U.S. State Department pointed to how catastrophic AI could be to national security. Gladstone AI conducted interviews with over 200 people from various AI-related sectors like companies or cybersecurity researchers and stated that the most AI systems could possibly pose an extinction-level threat to humankind, namely by being weaponized to inflict irreversible damage or by losing control of its privacy system. Gladstone AI's report called for the U.S. government to intervene and push for stronger measures to thwart such a threat. And lastly, ever since the government implemented green license plates for corporate-owned cars, we've seen the sales of imported luxury cars also come down. The Korea Automobile Importers and Distributors Association reported a 19.4% on-year drop in imported vehicle sales in January. This was the lowest since 2013. Also effective from that month, the Korean government made sure that all corporate-owned vehicles had lime green license plates to distinguish them from privately owned cars with white plates. And the reason why the government decided to do this was because local companies enjoy tax cuts of up to $6,000 per year if they buy or lease a car for business purposes. However, it's been tradition for many to exploit this practice. We've seen many sons and daughters of business owners drive these corporate cars as if it were their own personal car. And also before this new policy, the law did not cap the total deductible amount over time, which allowed people to write off the entire purchase price of the car under corporate expenses. And though this may not be the only reason behind the drop in imported luxury car sales, green license plates have definitely caused the buzz in Korea, which is exactly why I'd like to ask our panelists what you think about this policy.
Yeah, so I do understand the government's intention to change the color of the number plates on the corporate-owned cars, but it's my wonder whether this would be really effective at all. Of course, it would curb the money laundering by many firms, and like you mentioned, it would stop the sons and daughters of jaebers from using these corporate-owned cars for their private use. But at the same time, changing the number plate into green would actually become symbol of the wealth in the end. So the bottom line of this policy is to actually spread the fairness value within our society. But if we see cars on the roads with green plates, then people would think, oh, that guy is driving corporate-owned cars, meaning that he would be rich. And this can also be one form of a way to brag about your wealth. And at the same time, I think there will be various attempts from the companies to circumvent this policy and create loopholes. Still, there are just so many corporate-owned cars on the roads up to today, and I think it will take some time for this regulation to settle in within our society.
That's a very new perspective, Sang-hyuk, because normally what I would think is now that we're seeing green license plates, we would think that, oh, that's just a corporate car, that's not your own personal car. But at the same time, that's a great point, because if you think about it, if you're able to own a corporate car, that means you have a business, which can also flaunt your wealth. What about you? What do you think?
No, I totally agree with Sang-hyuk, and I don't think this will be very effective. And as Sang-hyuk mentioned, it could potentially even create a new form of social stratification based on wealth. So if you have those green plates, it means that you own a corporate car. And this could lead to stereotyping and discrimination as well. And to be honest, I'm a little worried about that whole new phenomenon that might arise. But policies come and go. So if it proves to be ineffective once it's rolled out, then it may disappear in the future.
Exactly. I think this is something that we should be concerned about. We're already seeing so much discrimination already when it comes to flaunting wealth. But maybe this policy might even exacerbate that with more social stratification. Now, that was our news feed for this Thursday. We're going to switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day now. Today is White Day, a romantic day celebrated exactly 1 month after Valentine's Day here in Korea. It's also seen as a day men give gifts to women, because on Valentine's Day here in Korea, women give gifts to men. Celebrated every March 14th, White Day is an extra day for couples to commemorate their love. And in light of this day, we're going to be looking at the latest dating patterns and inclinations of people from our generation. And as an icebreaker, I would like to ask how you guys think millennials and Gen Zers, given that you guys are representing them, are dating these days. And do you guys have any special plans for White Day yourself?
Well, I don't have any special plans.
I mean, you look amazing. It looks like you have plans.
Thank you. Well, I don't. Many millennials and Gen Zs seem to be indulging in luxurious dating these days, actually. However, opinions are divided when it comes to how much money one needs to spend on a date. Some young people even believe that they need to have a certain amount of money to even be able to date someone. And to shed more light on this, a survey was conducted to find out what the MZers consider to be a reasonable amount of money to spend on a date. So if you take a look at the screen, the results of the survey show that there's no clear consensus as to how much money should be used, but more than 2/3 of the respondents in total believe that the reasonable budget for an anniversary date is between $75 to $230 US. So that would be about 100,000 won to 300,000 won. And I believe that the amount you spend on activities with a partner is actually very subjective and dependent on mutual agreement. So there's no fixed answer as to how much you should spend, and at times you might end up spending a little more than usual, while on other occasions you could have an enjoyable time without spending a penny.
Exactly. What about you, Sang-hyuk? How are you enjoying dating these days, and do you have any special plans?
Well, I have good news for Ji. She's not the only one who doesn't have any special...
You know, might as well all play together.
Oh yeah, that would be good. Okay, so, but I don't have like special plans on White Day too. But the thing that I found really interesting is that a lot of media coverage says that these days the marriage rate and the dating rate of Korea is really low, but somehow people around me are so eager to find a lover and to get married. But of course, the dating patterns and styles have changed over time when we compare today with the 90s and the early 2000s. And nowadays, many millennials and Gen Zs prefer to go to hipster places. And I think we talked about this the other day in the newsstand. Many youth want to go to Seongsu-dong or Munrae-dong, where they renovated old facilities into new ones, and many young people post social media postings about those places. And I think the dating styles can differ depending on your age groups. So if you are in your early or mid-20s, you have that energy, and that's the time when you have the passion and fury love with your girlfriend or boyfriend. So they tend to go to outdoor activities like hiking and camping. Now, on the other hand, for those couples in their 30s, like me, we are financially stable, but at the same time, we lack like energies and physical power, which was a bit sad, but still, we go to like indoor places like hotels or comic rooms where you can read comic books and relax.
I mean, I think everyone has their personal preference, but I can relate to this because especially my friends, I'm still in my 20s, and a lot of my friends are meeting people in their 30s, and there's a disparity into what they want to do. The discrepancy is those in their 20s want to go on about, they're still really lighted up, but those in their 30s are like, why don't we go to a cafe? Comic book room, board game cafe, and just like chill there. Now, I actually listed a few traits I found from our generation, and I wanted to test out if they're actually applicable to our panelists. So the first trait I tracked down was that many young couples in Korea seem to be quite sensitive with how they divide their dating fees, which is exactly why some make a common dating account or a couple shared account. So have you ever used this? And we're going to incorporate our OX game again. We haven't done this in a while. So hold up O if you've ever had a shared couples account with your partner.
No.
No? And Sang-yeok?
No.
Okay, both of you are no, so why don't we hear you out first?
Well, I haven't. I remember my uncle telling me, he said once you start calculating expenses with the person you love, then the relationship will start losing that love.
Oh, that's such a great word.
It is, right? But it's not because of that I didn't have a shared bank account.
Okay.
I do believe that it's fair to split expenses or take turns at least treating each other. But I do remember one of my close friends having this account with her boyfriend back in college. She told me that he wanted to make the account, but her mother thought it was unattractive since he was 6 years older than her and was earning a lot more than her, and she was only a college student. So I guess depending on the circumstances, it could be a little subjective and different.
I see. What about you, Sang-yeok?
So I never actually made dating accounts or like strictly split the bills with my ex-girlfriends. It's because we didn't want to like intervene with each other's spendings or expenditure. We just wanted to be cool and comfortable, and I didn't really want to bother into my girlfriend's bank accounts. We just had this belief, what's yours is yours. But at the same time, we didn't want to create like one-way love or unconditional love where one side has to sacrifice everything. So for example, when I bought dinner, then she would buy me a drink. And when she bought a movie ticket, then I would obviously buy popcorns or sodas. But come to think of it, I think this was all possible because we were not actually thinking about getting married back then. So at the time, we were just typical couples in the 20s, passionate, and we didn't really have this marriage on our bucket list. But if I make girlfriend now and if we go out together, then I would have to consider making bank accounts for marriage because, as you know, weddings these days cost a lot, and it is really difficult to raise a child with a small amount of money. So you really have to save some decent amount of assets in order to have a family.
So I think we can all agree that dating fees is definitely a deal breaker when it comes to making new relationships. I do think because we're living in such high inflation times, and as you mentioned, Sang-yeok, marriage, raising a kid, all those realistic factors require a lot of money, which is something that might push a lot of couples to not really get into a relationship. And speaking of not getting into a relationship, a recent survey from a survey company called WebBrain found that 8 out of 10 people last year thought it was a definite deal breaker. And that's why I think our generation really values fairness even in a romantic relationship. And another concept that I think resonates with people from our generation is the concept of situationships. Now, this is a casual, undefined, commitment-free relationship. And if it's when you may have these romantic or sexual relationships situationships with someone, but you don't necessarily label or define the commitment. And it's a middle ground between friends and committed romantic partners. And I think it really encapsulates the modern nuance of relationships these days. But I'm quite curious as to whether you guys heard about this term, as it was the word of the year in 2023.
Exactly. Well, I did hear about this term, and in fact, it's a romantic arrangement that exists before or without defining the relationship, or DTR, they say, and so it lacks commitment and the associated norms or expectations, but it's a little more intimate than what they call a friendship with benefit.
Then quick O or X, are you for or against?
It depends, but O, if you're happy and it's a healthy relationship.
Oh, why? Give us a little bit more explanation.
Because I think it requires a lot of communication between the two partners. And I mean, it could have a lot of pros. Millennials these days, they're really worried about making ends meet, but at the same time, they do want intimacy. But in this situationship, you can have freedom, but at the same time, you can have that intimacy, and you could also get to learn about the other person without that time or pressure.
I see.
So you could really strike a balance between the two different needs, I
guess it's about how you perceive that type of thing. If it works for you, I mean, we always say you do you, but at the end of the day, what do you think about situationships? Are you for or against?
Well, actually, I'm against it.
Briefly,
but I do understand why people pursue situationship with their lover, because these days, the modern days are just so hectic. We have a lot of things to care about, our family, friends, our work. But at the same time, if this kind of belief spreads across our society, then it's my concern that there will be a lack of responsibility when it comes to having affairs and getting love with each other. So I think love always follows the responsibility. If you want to make a girlfriend, then you actually have to go out and search for a girl, socialize with others, and try your best to build the best relationship as much as possible. Now, if this kind of situationship continues, then there will be a lack of responsibility, and virtues, humanistic virtues, will be gone.
Exactly. I find it quite ironic that situationships have originated from not wanting a label, but we've already labeled this type of relationship as a situationship. Now, we asked our viewers whether they heard about this term situationships as well, as it seems to perfectly capture a growing number of younger couples' dating tendencies. Take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Tiris Bell. Tiris Bell says, I think every romantic relationship hits the situationship phase, but I prefer not to, as there's no clear expectation, and I'd probably get mixed signals and feelings. Hannah said, I view situationships as merely a temporary fix for those afraid of loneliness. For myself, I refuse to settle for anything less than a relationship built on clarity and mutual respect. Sunny says, I think being in a situationship is fine if you're ready to be honest with yourself and communicate well with your partner to let them know what you want. If it can give you a chance to explore more options without consuming an enormous amount of emotional energy or fear of commitment. Now, I think this really encapsulates what our panelists and our generation thinks about dating, but to better find out such reasons behind our evolving dating patterns from our generation, we're going to include a psychology expert in our talks. Stay tuned for our live interview. Let's find out more about the mindset behind millennials and Gen Z wanting fairness in a committed relationship or even just a situationship. We're going to turn to Christy Jun, a counselor from Torch Trinity Counseling Center. Welcome, Christy.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so based on our discussion so far, why do you think millennials and Gen Z seem to have these traits when dating, which is a preference for fairness and even situationships?
Well, there may be different reasons, depending on what people strive for in their life and what they strive for in relationships. MZs who want more freedom and choice would probably prefer situationship. And those who actually fear commitment, as the poll says, feel uneasy about making long-term relationship plans, would also just want to go with the flow and just be flexible. And I think another reason could be that just some want to just get the benefits of a relationship and not want to sacrifice. And against the sense of not wanting to sacrifice and fulfill only one's own needs is something that is more prevalent in the modern society. And perhaps materialism could also explain why people are sensitive about spending more in a relationship. relationships, that they would want fairness in spending money too. Also, as young people are in search of personal, professional, financial stability, some might not want to get too attached in a relationship, thinking it may distract them from pursuing their goals.
I see, Christy, though. Then what are some psychological drawbacks, though, to this?
Yes, I'm sure there are people who benefit from situationship, but we would have to consider the drawbacks. People in situationship may lack emotional security and may worry about how long the relationship will last, feel unsure about what to expect from your partner, and even may be unable to express one's needs. This sense of ambiguity and uncertainty can increase a person's stress and anxiety. It's very important for someone to feel safe and secure in a relationship. And actually having a certain boundary in all relationships helps you to feel safe. And boundaries help determine what is okay, what is not okay. And when there's no communicated, respected boundaries, that's when a relationship could get on a toll and even be unsafe at times.
Okay, so then what does it mean to be in a mentally fulfilling and healthy relationship? Any red flags to look out for?
Yes, I would love to elaborate on what I mentioned about boundaries. I think being in a fulfilling, safe relationship means setting boundaries, communicating your needs and expectations, and even issues you might be having in the relationship. So healthy relationship means both partners' needs are being met, not being one-sided. So a red flag could be when one partner is just trying to benefit from his or her own needs and harm the other. And in a healthy relationship, there are going to be both benefits and sacrifices that come along. It's going to be inevitable. Wanting just to get out of a relationship or using the relationship to benefit oneself might lead to an unhealthy relationship. So both partners who are willing to commit to a relationship despite one's effort, sacrifice, may be more ready to build fulfilling, healthy relationships.
And I think this is great advice that comes in White Day. Hopefully all couples out there or those in a situationship will really take that into heart. Thank you so much, Christy. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, too.
All right, now ending off, since it's White Day, I'd like to ask our panelists to give us some recommendations as to any hot places we can go around for dates here in Seoul.
Well, it's almost cherry blossom season, so I'd like to go to one of those famous spots. And today I was recommended that Dongguk University has a beautiful hill where the trees make a very nice arch. So it's
so pretty.
So it's apparently a very good photo spot, and I'd like to go there. So.
I think it's so nice, and you're dressed like a cherry blossom yourself, so hopefully you might be able to go today. What about you?
Okay, as a Dongguk University graduate, this is my first time hearing about that spot. Okay, so if you are bored about outdoor activities or watching cherry blossom, maybe indoor activities can be awesome in the White Day, like going to musicals or opera shows. We have the Seoul Arts Center nearby Arirang, so why don't you give it a try?
Yeah, come to Arirang, see us, wish us all a happy White Day, and then go watch a musical. And I think the ending note for our episode today is to understand that you need to communicate with your lover, whatever type of relationship you're in, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy a wonderful White Day all over the world. In the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Choi Ji-hee.
Always a pleasure.
And Im Sang-hyuk.
Happy White Day.
Happy White Day. Now, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's my Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid.